The station floated in the darkness between stars. It was old. Older than most civilizations that now traveled through space. The Galactic Watch Council had built it thousands of years ago, and from this place they watched everything. Elder Vorum stood near the great window, his tall body wrapped in robes of silver and blue. His skin was pale like moonlight, and his eyes were large and black, holding the wisdom of 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species discover fire, then steel, then the power of atoms. Most of them destroyed themselves. The ones that survived learned to be quiet. They learned to be peaceful. They joined the galactic community and followed the old rules. But there was one world that troubled him. Earth. The humans had been under observation for 300 years. When the Watchers first found them, they were burning their own cities with nuclear weapons. Vorum remembered watching the footage with disgust. Such violence. Such waste. He had written in his report that humanity would be extinct within 2 centuries. They were too aggressive, too emotional, short-lived to learn wisdom. He had been wrong. Somehow, against all logic, the humans survived. They stopped their wars. They cleaned their poisoned air and water. They united under one government. And now they were reaching for the stars. Observer Seleth walked into the room, carrying a data tablet. Seleth was young by Watcher standards, only 400 years old. Where Vorum was tired and certain of his knowledge, Seleth was curious. That curiosity often led to questions that annoyed the Elder. "I have the latest report on Earth," Seleth said, holding up the tablet. Vorum did not turn from the window. "And are they still building their little rockets?" "Yes, Elder, but there is something strange." Seleth moved closer, showing Vorum the screen. "They are building something in orbit around Mars. Something very large. Our sensors cannot see through their shielding." This made Vorum turn. His black eyes narrowed. "They have shielding technology." "It appears so." "We do not know how they developed it. Our records show nothing." Vorum took the tablet and looked at the blurry images. There was definitely something there. A shape, a structure. It was massive, but the details were hidden behind some kind of energy field. "It is probably a space station," Vorum said, handing back the tablet. "Or a mining facility. They have been harvesting asteroids for decades." "This is nothing new." "With respect, Elder, the energy readings are unusual. The power output suggests something more than mining equipment." Vorum waved his hand dismissively. "They have barely mastered fusion power. Whatever they are building, it is primitive. Let them play with their toys. They are children pretending to be adults." Seleth wanted to argue, but knew it was pointless. The Elder had made his judgment about humanity long ago, and nothing would change his mind. But Seleth could not stop watching the data. There was something about those readings that felt wrong. Or perhaps felt right in a way that scared the young observer. The Galactic Watch Council was not the only power in the galaxy. There were others. The Dominion was the largest, an empire of conquest and control. They had grown powerful by taking what they wanted from weaker species. The Council kept them in check through treaties and diplomacy. But everyone knew the peace was fragile. If humanity had built something valuable, the Dominion would want it. Seleth returned to the observation center. A circular room filled with screens and holographic displays. 12 other Watchers sat at their stations, monitoring different parts of the galaxy. Seleth took a seat and pulled up the Earth file again. The humans were fascinating. They lived such short lives, rarely more than 100 years, yet they accomplished so much in that time. They built cities and tore them down. They created art and weapons with equal passion. They loved and hated with an intensity that the long-lived Watchers could not understand, and they never stopped moving forward. In 300 years, humanity had gone from horse-drawn carriages to nuclear power, from wooden ships to spacecraft. No other species in galactic records had progressed so fast. It was almost unnatural. Seleth zoomed in on the Mars orbital readings again. The shielded structure was approximately 5 kilometers long. 5 kilometers. That was larger than most space stations in the galaxy. What were they building? The answer came 6 months later. Seleth was on duty when the alarms started screaming. Every screen in the observation center turned red. The other watchers jumped from their seats, voices rising in confusion and fear. What is happening? Someone shouted. Seleth checked the sensors and felt cold fear spread through their body. There was a gravitational anomaly at the edge of the Theris system. Something had just arrived through a space fold. Something enormous. That is impossible, Seleth whispered. Humans do not have fold technology. But the sensors did not lie. The signature was unmistakable. A ship had just jumped into the system, and its energy readings matched the structure they had been watching near Mars. Elder Vorum rushed into the room, his robes flowing behind him. Report, what has entered our space? Seleth's hands were shaking as they brought up the visual feed. The image cleared, and everyone in the room stopped breathing. It was a ship. A warship. And it was unlike anything they had ever seen. The vessel was massive, nearly 5 kilometers of dark metal and sharp angles. There were no elegant curves, no beautiful designs. It was brutal and ugly and covered with weapons. Railgun batteries lined its hull like teeth. Missile tubes dotted its surface. The ship looked like it had been built for one purpose only. War. That is human construction, Seleth said, voice barely above a whisper. The energy signature matches the Mars structure. Elder Vorum stared at the screen. For the first time in centuries, he had no words. His certainty cracked like ice under pressure. The humans had not built a space station. They had not built a mining facility. They had built a warship. A real warship. And they had brought it here, to the heart of galactic civilization. Counselor Mara appeared on the communication screen, her face pale with shock. Elder Vorum, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel. They are requesting permission to approach. Vorum found his voice. Permission? They jump into our system with a war machine and ask for permission. What should we do? The elder looked at the ship again. 17 watcher vessels were already moving to surround it, but they looked like insects next to a mountain. Let them approach, Vorum said slowly, and pray to the old gods that they truly come in peace. On the observation screen, the human warship began to move forward. Its name was painted on the hull in white letters that glowed against the dark metal .isv harem. Seleth stared at it and felt something they had never felt before. Not fear? Not exactly. It was respect mixed with something deeper. The humans had done the impossible. They had surprised the Watchers, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Park Tai-Ho stood on the bridge of the ISV harem, with his hands clasped behind his back. He was a man in his late 40s, with gray hair cut short and a face that showed the weight of responsibility. His uniform was simple, dark blue with silver buttons. Nothing fancy or decorated. He was not a man who needed medals to prove his worth. Through the main viewport, he could see them. 17 alien ships, arranged in a half circle around the harem. They were beautiful vessels. All smooth lines and glowing lights like works of art floating in space. Compared to them, his ship looked like a beast made of iron and fury. Tai-Ho did not mind. Beauty did not win battles. Captain, we are being scanned. Lieutenant Yoon Hannah reported from the tactical station. She was younger than him, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her fingers moved across the control panel with practiced speed. They are trying to penetrate our shields. Should I block them? Let them look, Tai-Ho said calmly. Let them see exactly what we brought. Dr. Shin-Nari sat at the communications console, headphones pressed to her ears. She was the ship's xenolinguist, trained to speak with species humanity had never met. Her job had been theoretical until today. I am receiving multiple transmissions, Captain. They are demanding that we power down our weapons and surrender the vessel for inspection. A small smile crossed Tai-Ho's face. Surrender. They want us to surrender.
Yes, sir.
They say it is standard protocol for unknown vessels entering council space. Tai-Ho turned to look at the alien ships again. For 3 centuries, these beings had watched Earth. They had observed humanity struggle and bleed and nearly destroy itself. They had written reports calling humans primitive and violent. They had expected humanity to die or remain trapped on their homeworld forever. They had been watching, and never once had they offered help. "Send a reply," Taiho said. "Tell them this. We come in peace. But we will not kneel." Nari hesitated for a moment, then transmitted the message. The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. Down in engineering, Koho was running system checks on the main reactor. He was a thin man with messy hair and glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. Some called him crazy. Others called him a genius. Both were probably correct. "How are the power levels?" asked one of his assistants. Jiho grinned. "Perfect. Beautiful. This ship could fight for days without stopping." He patted the reactor housing like it was a beloved pet. "They have no idea what we built. No idea at all." The harem was humanity's greatest achievement. It had taken 40 years to design and 10 years to build. Every nation on Earth had contributed resources and knowledge. The ship was not just a military vessel. It was a statement, a promise, a warning. Humanity would never be helpless again. On the bridge, Nari received another transmission. Her face showed surprise. "Captain, one of the aliens is responding directly. She calls herself Counselor Mara. She wishes to speak with you." "Put her on screen." The main viewport flickered, and an image appeared. Counselor Mara was tall and slender, with skin the color of pale lavender and eyes that seemed to glow softly. Her expression was cautious, but curious. "Captain of the human vessel," she said, her voice translated through the ship's systems. "I am Mara, representative of the Galactic Watch Council. You have entered our space without invitation. You carry enough weapons to destroy a small fleet. You refuse to surrender. Please explain your intentions." Taiho stepped forward. "Counselor Mara, my name is Park Taiho. I am the commander of this ship. Our intentions are simple. We wish to make contact with the galactic community as equals, not as subjects, not as prisoners. As equals, you bring a warship to request equality? We bring a warship because history has taught us what happens to those who come unarmed. We have studied the galaxy from afar. We know about the Dominion. We know how they treat weaker species. We will not allow that to happen to our people." Mara was silent for a moment. Her glowing eyes studied the human captain with obvious interest. "You have wisdom for such a young species. But you must understand your presence here is causing great concern. Elder Vorum and the Council are unsettled." "I mean no harm to the Council," Taiho said. "We simply wish to talk. To establish relations, but we will not do so on our knees." Behind him, Lieutenant Hannah watched her tactical display. More ships were arriving, not just Council vessels. She recognized the design from intelligence reports. Dominion warships. They were hanging back, watching, waiting. "Captain," she said quietly, "we have company. 32 Dominion ships just entered the system." Taiho's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "I see them." On the screen, Counselor Mara's expression changed. She had seen the same readings. "The Dominion fleet is commanded by Admiral Torek. He is not a friend to new species. I suggest you be very careful, Captain. Thank you for the warning, Counselor." The communication ended, and Taiho turned to face his crew. They were looking at him, waiting for orders. Some were afraid. He could see it in their eyes. They were deep in alien territory, surrounded by ships from civilizations that were ancient when humanity was still living in caves. But they did not run. They did not panic. They were human. "Listen to me," Taiho said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "We knew this moment would come. We prepared for it. Those ships out there, they have been watching us for centuries. They think they know what we are. They think we are primitive, violent, stupid," letting his words sink in. "Today, we show them the truth. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to fight unless we must. But we are here. And we will not leave until they understand one thing. Humanity bows to no one." Sergeant Beekdoan, standing by the door with his Marine squad, nodded firmly. His men were the best soldiers Earth had trained, ready to defend the ship against any threat. They had trained for years for this mission, Cernari said. "Counselor Mara is arranging a diplomatic meeting on the watch station. She wants you to come aboard for talks." Taiho considered this. It could be a trap. But staying on the ship and doing nothing would accomplish nothing either. Tell her I accept. I will bring a small team. Dr. Shin, you will come with me. Sergeant Beak, select for Marines for escort.
Saluted.
Yes, sir. As the captain prepared to leave, Lieutenant Hannah stepped closer. Sir, what if this goes wrong? What if they try to take the ship while you are gone? Taiho looked at her. His eyes were calm, steady, full of trust. Then you destroy anything that threatens us. No hesitation, no mercy. That is why I am leaving you in command. Hannah straightened her spine. Understood, Captain. The shuttle bay doors opened, and a small transport vessel launched from the harem. It carried Captain Taiho, Dr. Shin Nari, Sergeant Beak Doan, and 4 Marines toward the watch station. Behind them, the harem waited in the darkness of space. Its weapons were powered, its shields were raised, and its crew was ready. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The watch station was enormous. It floated like a silver flower in the void, its petals stretching outward to catch the light of distant stars. As the human shuttle approached, Captain Taiho looked through the viewport and felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. For 300 years, beings inside that station had watched humanity. They had recorded every war, every disaster, every moment of human cruelty and kindness. They knew more about Earth's history than most humans did, and they had judged humanity unworthy of contact. Today, that changed. The shuttle docked in a vast hangar bay. The doors opened and Taiho stepped out first, followed by Dr. Shinari and Sergeant Beak Doan with his 4 Marines. The air was cool and smelled faintly of something sweet, like flowers after rain. Waiting for them was a group of watchers. They were tall, taller than any human, with long limbs and flowing robes. Their skin came in shades of pale blue and silver, and their eyes were deep pools of black that reflected everything. At the front stood Elder Vorum. He did not bow or offer any greeting. He simply stared at the humans with an expression that mixed curiosity with contempt. So, Vorum said, his voice echoing in the chamber, the primitives have come to speak with us face to face. How brave. How foolish. Taiho did not react to the insult. He had expected it. Elder Vorum, thank you for receiving us. I did not want to receive you, Vorum replied coldly. Counselor Mara convinced me it was necessary. She believes you might have something valuable to say. I have my doubts. Dr. Shin Nari stepped forward slightly. We understand your concerns, Elder. Our arrival was unexpected, but we come with honest intentions. Vorum's black eyes moved to her. You speak our language well, human. Did you study our communications? Spy on our transmissions? We learned what we could, Nari admitted. Just as you learned about us by watching our world. A flicker of something passed across Vorum's face. Perhaps surprise. Perhaps anger. He turned and began walking toward a large doorway. Follow me. The council is waiting. The group walked through corridors of white stone and glowing panels. Doan kept his hand near his sidearm, his eyes scanning every shadow. His Marines did the same. They were trained to expect trouble everywhere. Observer Seleth joined them along the way. Falling into step beside Nari, the young watchers studied the humans with open fascination. Your ship, Seleth said quietly. It is remarkable. Our sensors could not penetrate its shields. How did you develop such technology? Nari glanced at Taiho, who gave a small nod. We learned to protect ourselves, she answered. We had good teachers. Teachers. What teachers? Our own history. They entered the council chamber, a vast circular room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars above. 12 watchers sat in floating chairs arranged in a half circle. Counselor Mara was among them, her lavender face showing relief when she saw the humans arrive safely. At the center of the room was a platform. Vorum gestured for Taiho to stand there. It felt like standing in a courtroom surrounded by judges who had already decided the verdict. Captain Park Taiho of Earth Vorum announced to the council, You have brought a warship to our neutral territory. You have refused to surrender your vessel for inspection. You claim to come in peace, Yet you carry enough firepower to destroy a planet. Explain yourself. Taiho took a breath and looked around the room. Every eye was on him. This moment would shape humanity's future in the galaxy. He could not afford to fail. 300 years ago, he began, your people found Earth. You saw us fighting our final great war. You watched millions die in nuclear fire. And you decided we were too dangerous, too primitive, to contact. You chose to observe us from a distance, waiting for us to destroy ourselves. Vorum's expression did not change. That is correct. It was the logical choice, perhaps. But while you watched, we survived. We rebuilt. We united. And we asked ourselves a question that your people never had to face. Taiho paused. What happens when you meet someone stronger than you? Silence filled the chamber. You have been powerful for so long, Taiho continued. You and the other advanced species. You forgot what it feels like to be weak, to be vulnerable. But humans have never forgotten. Our history is written in blood. Every generation learned the same lesson. If you cannot defend yourself, you will be destroyed. He pointed upward, toward where his ship waited in the darkness. The harem is not a weapon of conquest. It is a promise. A promise to our children and grandchildren that no one will ever do to them what was done to their ancestors. We watched the stars and saw empires like the Dominion. We read about what they do to weaker species. We refuse to be victims. Counselor Mara leaned forward. You built a warship because you feared us? We built a warship because we learned that fear is not enough. Fear makes you hide. Strength makes you survive. Elder Vorum stood slowly. Pretty words, human. But you are still primitives. Your species is barely 300,000 years old. We have existed for millions of years. What could you possibly teach us? Dr. Shin Nari spoke then, her voice clear and strong. We can teach you what it means to fight for survival with nothing but your will in your hands. We can teach you how to turn weakness into strength. And we can teach you the most important lesson of all, which is, never underestimate those who have nothing to lose. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Some of the counselors looked offended. Others looked thoughtful. Observer Seleth watched the humans with growing respect. Meanwhile, far from the station, something else was happening. On the harem, engineer Ko Jiho was running a routine scan when he noticed something wrong. Encrypted signals were bouncing between the Dominion ships. He traced the patterns and felt his blood run cold. Lieutenant Hannah, he called through the internal communicator. You need to see this. Hannah arrived in engineering within minutes. Jiho showed her the data on his screen. They are coordinating something. Attack formations. Targeting solutions. They are not here to watch, Lieutenant. They are here to take our ship. Hannah's face went hard. How long do we have? I do not know. Hours. Maybe less. She immediately opened a secure channel to Captain Taiho on the station. Captain, we have a problem. The Dominion fleet is preparing an attack. They want the harem. In the council chamber, Taiho heard the message through his earpiece. His expression did not change, but his body tensed. Understood. Keep the ship ready. We are finishing here. He turned back to the council. Elders, I must warn you. The Dominion ships in this system are not here for diplomacy. They are preparing to attack my vessel. Vorum's eyes widened. That is impossible. They would not dare strike in neutral space. Check your sensors. See for yourself. Counselor Mara quickly pulled up the readings. Her lavender skin went pale as she saw the data. He is right. The Dominion fleet is moving into attack position. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Vorum shouted for calm, but the other counselors were panicking. Only Taiho and his people remained still. It seems Taiho said quietly that your neutrality means nothing to those with enough ships. He looked at Sergeant Dohan. Get our people back to the shuttle. We are leaving. As they moved toward the exit, Counselor Mara stopped them. Captain, wait. If the Dominion attacks, they will destroy your ship. You have no chance against 32 warships. Taiho looked at her with calm eyes. Counselor, you have been watching humanity for 300 years. You have seen our wars, our struggles, our refusal to surrender, even when all hope was lost. He smiled, just slightly. You should know by now. We always have a chance. The shuttle launched from the station and raced back toward the harem. Behind them, the Dominion fleet was already moving, their weapons powering up, ready to claim the prize they had been waiting for. On the harem's bridge, Lieutenant Yunhana watched them come. Her hands rested on the tactical controls. Her crew stood ready at their stations. All hands, she announced over the ship-wide communicator. Battle stations. The enemy is coming, and we're going to show them exactly what humanity can do. The first shots came without warning. Admiral Torek had commanded the Dominion fleet for 50 years. He had conquered 12 worlds and destroyed countless ships. He had never lost a battle. When he saw the human warship, he felt not fear but hunger. Whatever technology allowed such a primitive species to build such a vessel, he wanted it. The Dominion would pay any price, kill anyone. The ship would be his. All ships. He ordered from his command throne, target the human vessel. Disable its engines. I want it captured intact. 32 Dominion warships opened fire at once. Beams of purple energy sliced through space toward the harem. Missiles launched in swarms. Their guidance systems locked on the massive human ship. On the harem's bridge, Lieutenant Yunhana watched the incoming fire on her tactical display. Time seemed to slow. She had trained for this moment her entire career. Every simulation, every exercise. It all came down to now. Evasive pattern Delta, she commanded. Point defense systems online, return fire. The harem moved. Despite its enormous size, it turned with surprising speed. Thrusters fired along its hull, pushing it out of the path of the worst attacks. Some shots still hit, splashing against the shields in explosions of light. The shields held, then the harem. Answered railguns opened up along the ship's spine. Electromagnetically accelerated projectiles, each one weighing several tons, streaked across space at a fraction of the speed of light. The first Dominion cruiser took 3 hits before the crew even realized they were under attack, which shields collapsed. Its hull cracked open. It exploded in a ball of fire and metal. On the watch station, Eldevorum stared at the battle through the main viewport. His hands were trembling. "That is impossible," he whispered. "Kinetic weapons should not penetrate Dominion shields." Observer Seleth stood beside him, equally stunned. "Their projectiles are moving faster than anything in our records. The shields cannot react in time." Counselor Mara watched in horror as a second Dominion ship died, then a third. "They are slaughtering them." Back on the harem, Engineer Ko-Jiho was laughing in the engine room. Alarms were screaming. Sparks flew from damaged conduits. But the reactor was holding, feeding power to the weapons and shields without pause. "Come on, you beautiful machine," he shouted, patting a console. "Show them what you can do." The captain's shuttle was racing back toward the ship. Inside, Taiho watched the battle unfold on a small screen. He saw the harem fighting alone against overwhelming numbers, and he felt pride swell in his chest. "They are holding," Dr. Shinari said, amazement in her voice. Sergeant Beekdone nodded grimly. "Lieutenant Hannah is a warrior, but we need to get back. They will try to board us." He was right. Admiral Torek had realized that his ships could not break the human vessel from a distance. He changed tactics. "Launch boarding pods," Torek commanded. "Send the assault teams. Take that ship piece by piece, if you must." Dozens of small craft erupted from the Dominion fleet. Speeding toward the harem, they were filled with Dominion soldiers, heavily armed and trained for close combat. On the harem, Hannah saw them coming. "We have incoming boarding craft. All Marine teams, prepare to repel boarders." Throughout the ship, soldiers grabbed their weapons and moved to defensive positions. They were outnumbered. The Dominion was sending hundreds of troops. But the corridors of the harem had been designed for exactly this situation. Narrow passages, reinforced bulkheads, kill zones where invaders would face concentrated fire. The first Dominion pod slammed into the hull and burned through. Alien. Soldiers poured out, their weapons raised, expecting easy prey. They found death instead. Human Marines opened fire from behind barricades. The corridor became a storm of bullets and blood. The Dominion soldiers had energy shields and advanced armor, but in such close quarters, It meant nothing. They fell by the dozens. Sergeant Doan's shuttle finally reached the harem. He and his men sprinted from the landing bay to join the defense. Captain Taiho went straight to the bridge, taking command from Hannah. Status report, he demanded. Hannah pointed at the tactical display. 8 enemy ships destroyed. 5 more heavily damaged. But they have breached our hull in 4 locations. Boarding parties are inside. Taiho nodded. And our casualties, 17 wounded, 3 dead, 3 dead. 3 families that would receive the worst news imaginable. Taiho pushed the grief aside. There would be time to mourn later. Now, he had to win. Target the enemy flagship, he ordered. Full power to the plasma batteries. Down in engineering, Jiho received the order. His grin became almost manic. Finally. I've been waiting to test these. The plasma batteries were humanity's most advanced weapons. Experimental, dangerous. They had never been fired in actual combat. Jiho diverted power from non-essential systems, pushing the reactor to its limits. Plasma batteries charging, he reported. Ready in 30 seconds. Admiral Torek saw the energy spike on his sensors. Something was happening on the human ship. Something big. For the first time, he felt a small whisper of doubt. All ships, concentrate fire on that vessel. Destroy it now. Dominion fleet unleashed everything they had. Beams and missiles poured toward the harem. The human ship shook under the assault. Alarms screamed. Fires broke out in several compartments, but the harem did not stop. Plasma batteries ready, Jiho announced. Taiho gave the order. Fire. Blue lightning erupted from the harem's forward sections. 3 beams of superheated plasma, hotter than the surface of a star, crossed the distance to the Dominion fleet in less than a second. 3 cruisers vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. One moment they were there, the next, only expanding clouds of vapor remained. Admiral Torek's flagship took a glancing hit. Half his ship melted. Systems failed across every deck. He was thrown from his command throne as his vessel spun out of control. Retreat, he screamed into the communicator. All ships retreat, but it was too late for many. The harem's railguns continued their deadly work. Missiles launched from its tubes, nuclear warheads finding their targets with perfect accuracy. Ship after ship died in the void. Inside the harem, the boarding parties were being eliminated. Sergeant Doan led his Marines through the corridors, hunting down every Dominion soldier. They fought with rifles and knives and bare hands when necessary. The aliens were taller and stronger, but the humans were fighting for their home, for their species. For everything in 27 minutes, it was over. 18 Dominion ships destroyed. 14 surrendered, their crews too shocked to continue fighting. Admiral Torek's flagship drifted powerless, its commander injured and defeated. Lieutenant Hannah opened a channel to the entire system. Her voice was calm, steady, and cold as ice. Attention all vessels. This is the ISV harem. We asked for peace. We were answered with violence. Let this be a lesson. Humanity will not be conquered. Humanity will not submit. Attack us again, and we will respond with everything we have. On the watch station, the council chamber was silent. The watchers stared at the screens, unable to believe what they had witnessed. Elder Vorium sat down heavily in his chair. Certainty, his arrogance, everything he had believed about humanity was shattered. They won, he said quietly, against impossible odds. They won. Observer Seleth walked to the window and looked. At the harem floating among the wreckage of the Dominion fleet, the ship was damaged but unbroken, just like the species that built it. Perhaps, Seleth said softly, we were watching the wrong things. We saw their violence, their chaos. But we never saw what it created. And what is that? Vorum asked. Seleth turned to face the elder. Survivors. They created survivors. On the harem, Captain Taiho walked through the damaged corridors, stepping over debris and fallen equipment. He passed Marines who saluted him, engineers who were already repairing systems, medical teams treating the wounded. He stopped at a viewport and looked out at the stars. The battle was over, but he knew it was only the beginning. The galaxy knew about humanity now. They had seen what humans could do when pushed. Some would fear them. Some would respect them. Some would want to destroy them, but none of them would ever ignore them again. Dr. Shinari found him there, staring into the void. "Captain, the Council wants to speak with you again. Counselor Mara says the situation has changed." Taiho nodded slowly. "Yes, I imagine it has." He took one last look at the stars, then turned and walked toward the shuttle bay. The war was over. Now came the harder part. Peace. 1 month had passed since the Battle of Theras, and the galaxy had not stopped talking about it. The recordings spread across every world. Every station, every colony with access to the communication networks. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly knew the name of humanity. They watched the footage over and over, seeing the massive human warship tear through the Dominion fleet like it was made of paper. Some were terrified. These humans, these short-lived creatures from a small blue world, had defeated one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. What would they do next? Would they conquer? Would they destroy? Others were inspired. For centuries, the Dominion had bullied weaker species into submission. They took what they wanted. They killed anyone who resisted. But the humans had shown that resistance was possible. That strength could come from unexpected places. Admiral Torek did not live to see the aftermath. His own government executed him for starting a war without authorization, for attacking a neutral system, and most importantly, for losing. The Dominion could accept cruelty. They could accept violence, but they could not accept failure. Captain Park Taiho stood in the main hall of the Galactic Watch Council. The chamber had been repaired since the battle. New panels covered the walls. Fresh flowers from a dozen worlds decorated the spaces between the floating chairs. Everything looked clean and bright, but Taiho knew appearances could deceive. 12 council members sat before him, including Elder Vorum and Counselor Mara. Their faces were serious, their eyes watchful. 1 month ago, they had looked at humans with contempt. Now, their expressions were harder to read. Captain Taiho, Elder Vorum began, his voice measured and careful on behalf of the Galactic Watch Council. "I must acknowledge what happened in this system. The Dominion violated our neutrality. They attacked an invited guest, and you defended yourself with remarkable effectiveness." Taiho nodded but said nothing. He had learned that silence often spoke louder than words. Vorum continued. "We have discussed humanity's place in the galactic community at length. There are those who believe you are too dangerous, that your species should be isolated until you learn proper restraint." His black eyes moved to look at something behind Taiho. Probably the other council members who had argued for that position. But others believed that your strength could be valuable, that perhaps humanity deserves a seat at the table, not as observers or subjects, but as partners. Counselor Mara spoke next. "The council has voted. Captain Taiho, on behalf of your species, we formally invite humanity to join the galactic community as full members. You will have the same rights and responsibilities as any other recognized civilization." Taiho let out a small breath. This was what they had hoped for, what they had fought for, but he was not naive enough to think it came without complications. "I am honored by this invitation," he said, "and I accept it on behalf of humanity. But I must ask, what conditions are attached?" Vorum almost smiled. "Almost, you are wise to ask. There are treaties to sign, trade agreements to negotiate, and questions about your military capabilities that many species will want answered. Questions I may choose not to answer." "That is your right. But trust is built slowly, Captain. If humanity wants true acceptance, you will need to show that your strength is not a threat to peace." Taiho met the elder's gaze without flinching. "We have never started a war, Elder Vorum. We have only finished them. If the galaxy can accept that, we will have no problems." The meeting continued for several hours, discussing details and procedures. But the important work was done. Humanity was no longer alone. They had earned their place among the stars, not through submission or begging, but through strength and sacrifice. Later that day, Observer Seleth found Captain Taiho in the station's garden. It was a beautiful space, filled with plants from hundreds of worlds, their colors and scents mixing together in strange harmony. Taiho sat on a bench, looking tired but peaceful. Seleth approached carefully, unsure how the human would react. "Captain, may I speak with you?" Taiho gestured to the empty space beside him. "Of course. Please sit." Seleth settled onto the bench, their long legs folding awkwardly. For a moment they sat in silence, watching alien flowers sway in the artificial breeze. "I have been watching your world for many years," Seleth finally said. "I thought I understood humans. I read the reports. I watched the recordings. I saw your wars, your cruelty, your endless conflicts, and now I realize I understood nothing." Seleth turned to look at Taiho. "I saw your violence, but not your resilience. I saw your chaos, but not your creativity. I saw your short lives, but not what you accomplished with the time you had." Taiho smiled slightly. "We are a complicated species. I wish to learn more. I have requested a transfer to Earth to serve as an ambassador for the Council. I want to understand humanity properly, not just from data files, but from living among you." "You would be welcome," Taiho said. "Dr. Shin would be happy to guide you. She believes understanding between species is the key to lasting peace." "And what do you believe, Captain?" Taiho thought about the question for a long moment. He thought about the battle, about the soldiers who died defending the ship, about the thousands of years of human history that had led to this moment. "I believe that peace is only possible when everyone involved has the power to fight. When no one is helpless, when every species can defend itself." He paused. "Weakness invites aggression. Strength encourages respect." Seleth nodded slowly. "That is a harsh philosophy. It is an honest one. Perhaps your people have been powerful so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to be prey. Humans have never had that luxury." They sat together as the garden lights dimmed, simulating evening on some distant world. Two beings from vastly different civilizations, finding common ground in the space between stars. On the harem, the crew was preparing for the journey home. The ship had been repaired as much as possible, though scars remained on its hull. Battle damage that would take months to fully fix. But the ship was space-worthy. The crew was eager to return to Earth. Lieutenant Yoon Hannah supervised the final preparations from the bridge. She had not slept more than a few hours since the battle, but she refused to rest until everything was ready. Sergeant Beek Doan found her there, staring at the navigation charts. "Lieutenant, the Marines are aboard. All equipment secured. We are ready to jump whenever you give the order." "Thank you, Sergeant." She glanced at him. "How are the wounded?" "Recovering. The medical team says everyone will survive." Doan hesitated. "We lost good people, but we also accomplished something no one thought possible." Hannah nodded. "The captain should be back soon. We will wait for him." An hour later, Captain Taiho returned with Dr. Shin. The crew gathered in the main hangar to welcome them back. There were no speeches, no grand celebrations, just quiet nods of respect and relief. Taiho walked to the bridge and took his seat in the command chair. He looked at his crew, these men and women who had followed him across the galaxy, who had fought and bled and survived. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "We are going home." The harem turned slowly, its massive engines glowing blue as they powered up. The watch station grew smaller in the viewports. The alien ships that had once surrounded them now kept a respectful distance. As the jump drive charged, Hannah approached the captain's chair. "Sir, do you think there will be more battles? More species who want to test us?" Taiho looked out at the stars. "There always are, but now they know the truth. When humans bring a warship, it is not a bluff. It is not a threat. It is a promise. A promise of what? That we will fight. That we will never surrender. And that anyone who threatens our people will pay a price they cannot imagine." The jump drive activated. Space twisted around the harem, and in a flash of light, the ship vanished from the Theros system. In the observation deck, Sergeant Beek Doan and Engineer Kogue stood by the window, watching the strange colors of hyperspace flow past. Jiho had found a bottle somewhere filled with clear liquid that smelled strongly of alcohol. "Soju," he explained, pouring 2 small cups. "I brought it from Earth. Been saving it for a special occasion." Doan took his cup. "I think this counts." They raised their drinks, looking out at the swirling void. To making an impression, Doan said. Jiho clinked his cup against the sergeant's. To surviving long enough to make another one. And for a moment, everything was quiet and still. Behind them, the harem carried its crew home through the endless darkness. A ship built from human determination. A crew forged by human struggle. A future one by human sacrifice. The galaxy had watched humanity for 300 years, waiting for them to destroy themselves. Instead, humanity had arrived, warship and all, and changed everything. And somewhere in the vast depths of space, other species were looking at their own stars, thinking about Earth, and wondering what those strange, short-lived, impossibly stubborn creatures would do next. The universe held its breath, and humanity smiled.